Okay, here's how I'm going to prep this piece for printing. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add some holes. I'm going to go to my holes option, select cube, and I'm going to go to the item here, and I have a hole here that's 50 millimeters and 6 millimeters deep. And I'm just going to double check there. I'm going to drop it in here. I'm going to drop one in here, drop one in here, drop one in here. I'm going to do the same thing on the top. I'm going to put a hole in here. Be careful not to get too close to the edge. Here, here, and here. Just to show that those are not going to go through the magnet holes. Then I'm going to go through my preview mode here, and I'm going to drag my preview down and just double check how that's going to slice. It's going to create nice holes through here. It's okay. I'm looking at the 4 holes, making sure that the width is good, and I can see my holes kick back in here. The bottom, everything else is going to be fairly thin, so I won't put any more holes in it than that. That will create a hollow part of these. Now for supports, I'm going to go to my heavy supports. I'm going to print this directly on the build plate. I'm going to add a support here, and I'm going to add one on the other side here. And I'm going to go into edit mode and scale those up a little bit, move them so that they're not touching. Do the same thing on the other side. Scale this up a little bit so it's big enough. It's going to support a whole bunch of tree supports off of it. And let's bring this piece here down as well, just so it comes in at an angle. Do the same thing here with this one. Okay, let's add the tree supports. So next thing I want to do is I want to go back into edit mode, and I want to select a medium support. And I want to put in my medium support. I wanted to start here. I'm going to hold my Alt key, tap, and attach where I want it to go to. I'm going to do another one in here. And this is just to help start this. I'm going to do another one on the inside edge here. I'm going to do another one here. Another one here. Okay, and I'm going to move this support here just a little bit. Grab this one and just move it a little bit more under there like that. Bring this piece out so it's a little bit more straight. Okay. Let's go to the other side real quick. Click on here, medium supports, tap and drop, tap and drop, tap and drop, tap and drop, tap and drop. Move this piece here, so bring that underneath a little bit and adjust the tip here so it comes out at a nice clean angle. And that is now ready to, for me, that's ready to go onto the build plate. These supports here are optional. So very quickly, that's the steps I'll go through to print this piece directly on the build plate. Stick around, and I'm going to explain my process and why I do the things the way that I do, and you can learn a little bit more about the way that these pieces are set up. All right, let's take a look at resin printing some of the bigger parts here for Ancient Evil City Crawler. So this is the large doorway from the set, and this one basically is anytime you have a tile where you have 2 blocks on the end, this is a good way to kind of quickly fill that plus the walls on the end. And it has some little cavities here for some window pieces that you can drop in, for some grating that you can drop in, and you can also use that little mesh stuff that old ladies use for cross stitching. You can buy it at the dollar store. It looks pretty good for metal grating. So you can see the cavity goes through here. Now one thing I want to point out is that these magnet holes in the bottom are actually tapered inwards, and I think on future versions we might increase this taper a little bit. What this allows you to do is print it directly on the build plate, but as you print directly on the build plate, we're going to get like a little bit of extra material on the bottom called the elephant's foot, because the build plate's going to overburn those layers, and the light's going to bleed and it's going to spread a little bit. And so these little inclines here, they actually compensate for that. They should actually print pretty much flat, so your clips will still go in the bottom. And we do that on all the bottoms of all the pieces, so that you can print directly on the build plate. Because I think you get better. I just think personally you get better results. The pieces are straighter and squarer, everything, if you print right on the build plate. So what is I'm looking at this in Lychee Slicer Pro. And I'm just going to go into preview mode here. And the question is, do I need to hollow this? And the answer is maybe. Yes, you can hollow it, but you can also print it solid. Hollowing typically is going to be about 2 mil. So if you would run a hollow on this, you'll get a hollow in here and a hollow in here. and in these parts here, depending on how you hollow it. But there might be another way to do it. I'm just going to look at trying to do that now. I'm going to supply resin optimized versions of these that have also have the bottoms of these tapered a little bit, and have these taperings here expanded a little bit, and have the hollowing pre-done for you, and they'll be designed to print right on the build plate, and those we'll be working on those this week to get them out for resin printers. When you run hollowing, and this you would have to, if you're using T2 box, then you're going to want to use the same, you're going to want to think about the settings a little bit differently. If you're using, but it's going to be the same kind of overall process. So you, in Leechy Slicer here, I'm going to go to my hollow section. I'm going to set my walls, and if I probably set my walls probably to 1.8 mil is probably a good amount. Infill to, you need to lower the infill, and now I can see what I can preview what's going on, and see, you can see what I'm getting here is I'm getting a little bit of hollowing inside this section right here. I'll go back to supports for a second. It can increase the hollowing amount here to, say, let's say put it at 2. If I put it at, say, I just want to find out the level which is not going through there. So that's going to create a hollow through these parts out here at the back. Now, it's not a great hollow. We're talking about 2.7 mils. So those are pretty thick walls, and this is going to come out as a pretty hefty chunk of resin, and it's going to eat up a lot of resin. So another way we could approach that is to not have any hollowing at all, and but we can create holes. And what you can do is you can dictate the depth of a hole. So let's start by putting a hole on the bottom. And we can change our holes here to, let's say, to cubes, and let's put one right here. Lucky because of the orientation here that I can put that on there. I'm going to bring this down here to, let's say 7.5 millimeters. Type that in, and I can say how much depth that wants to go, and I think this here is probably about 30 millimeters. No, it's not. It's going to be about 20 millimeters. Let's try and see what happens there. So I can't see that until I go to the preview mode, but if I go to the preview here, I can see the hole that's been cut out, and I can see the issue there is that it's the hole probably needs to be smaller. So let's go back and select this hole here. Let's make this hole 5 millimeters. 5. And let's move it a little bit more towards the outside as well too. Now remember, you only need to do this once, and I can see I'm getting kind of in the more or less in the right spot as I kind of go through. Now I want to avoid this magnet hole, so probably I want to change this hole here to be 15, and let's just update the thing here, and you can see that our hole is coming in here. So now I've created a hole in that chunk, and I can do the same thing on the top because I have a top cap that's going on here. And actually that's interesting. I can actually see, if I hold the hole over here on the depth, I can kind of see that. And I can go here and here, and I can see how high, I can see what my depth of my hole is on this side. So I would recommend, yeah, so 15 mil and by a 5 mil hole looks about right. And let's put that a little bit closer to the outside. Let's scrub back down here and double check our layers, and we can see what our hole is kind of doing. And that's going to take out a good chunk of resin on this model, right? Just by doing that. Let's put another hole here and here and here. So I'm printing this with no hollowing or infill, but there is going to be a hole in there, and that hole is going to print flat across the bottom. But it's fairly like that little grid doesn't really require any supports. Like this isn't going to have support. It's just going to print that because it's actually going to be a perfectly flat layer, and it's going to bind to whatever else is around it. And I'll show you what I mean. It doesn't need to be supported because that hole. If I step through the layers here, I think I can toggle through. It's actually going to come, it's actually going to start there and go there, so it's actually not even quite flat. And that's kind of, I think that's going to be okay. I really would not expect to have any sort of problem with that. Now, if you wanted to go further and you wanted to create additional holing in this, you could do in this chunk right here, but I wouldn't recommend it. You think you're getting, this part isn't that big to begin with, right? So you're not saving a lot of material. Now, if I want to select these holes, this is a Leechy Slicer thing, but if I want to select these holes, And if I change this to 6, does it change them all? No, it didn't, because they're not selected. Okay, so I have to do it like this. So shift, shift. Then when they're red, it means they're selected. I can now make these, say, 6 millimeters. And then if I check my slicing here, it's the bottom one. So that's pretty good. I mean, I just want to make sure that there's enough thickness on the wall. See, because it's very thin right there. So I might want to move this one in slightly. And I might want to move that one in slightly. And the thing is, you're just kind of trying to avoid this inside edge here. So let's just bring this one in a little bit. And update it. So it's a process again. If you're using G2 box, the bottom process is going to be kind of similar. Now I've got a 6 mil hole, so I've shaved off a little bit more material, and it's all going to work. Now the rest of this piece prints without supports on a resin printer, but I'm a little bit paranoid, so I like to add a couple of supports. And let me show you how I do that real quick on this piece. So let's go back to supports tab. You can do the same thing with G2 box. You're going to set up your supports kind of in a similar way, and you're just going to pin this one here. I'm going to go into my edit mode and move the support on this side, and move this across here. This is going to be kind of my main support, and I can select that whole support and scale it. I think, yeah, I'm just going to give it a little bit more beef through the bottom, and I'm going to do that on both sides. And then I'm just going to put this close to the base here, but because remember I'm printing right on my build plate. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a couple of fan supports that come off of this. And then you do that in the Lychee Slicer by holding the Alt key. Select where you want your support to go. You kind of want it to look for where it's going to kind of line up nicely. I'm going to kind of go here, and then hold Alt and then just drop it in there. And then it did something weird. Oh no, yeah, I'm in the wrong mode. Okay, and then I'm going to change this to a medium support here. And I'm just going to adjust the position of this main one first. And I'm going to put this one in here. You know, we're not going to add a ton of supports to this, so this is going to go really, really quick. And when we give the resin optimized files, we'll do build on. I'll build these tree supports and export those as both STLs. I may even I'll provide Lychee files for this, and I'll provide G2 files as well. I still think I have a copy of G2 box somewhere, so we'll run that. We'll supply the pre-supported files for people as well, and you can go in and kind of edit the supports if you want. And I'm just going to make some tree supports here. And what I'm going to do here is, I just want to be like double sure that this isn't going to kind of fail at the top, because you don't want to get your print all the way to the top here and then kind of have it the arch not print very well. And like I said, I've printed this without supports many times, but an abundance of caution and a little bit of extra material for the supports doesn't really matter. Okay, so let's grab all those, make those medium, make this one heavy, scale it, go into edit mode and scale it up a little bit and move it away from the base. And that's really all I would recommend to do for this piece here. I'm going to edit one thing. Let's bring this piece down a little bit, like the angle to be a little bit lower. And I will put those supports in here, and just kind of let that print with a little bit of extra support. I could put one under the chin too, but I want to just point this out. These pieces have been designed. See, there's extra material under the chin of these skulls here. There's even the way that these skulls have been designed. They've been designed so that they will always have something to grab onto. So there's going to be no islands. This has been part of the process of sculpting these files, is to think about in the end how they're going to be printed. So I've thought about like the elephant's foot overhang here, and thinking about stuff like that, thinking about how they're going to be printed and how that's going to help your overall experience. Because if you just bang these off on the printer, then you get them on the table, you spend your time painting the game and magnetizing all the pieces and then playing the game. That's what we want you to do. Let's have a lot of fun. So yeah, there you go. So you just add some manual holes and add a couple of supports if you feel that they're needed, and then slice that sucker and go. We'll just double check the slicing one more time. Just make sure that we don't see anything. It's kind of useful to kind of go here to see if you see any little islands or anything popping up. those supports, this little bit right here should, always prints really, really fine. I never add supports there. As I said, we really think about this with it being sculpted as being something that's going to print on both an FDM printer and a resin printer as smoothly as possible.